I'm Rob X, and this is The-X-Planation.
Well, folks, it's time to kick it old school, so you can feel cool. Give it to me, baby.
I can't help but think about a personal situation of my own after reading the article about the Seattle woman who was fatally shot by a Seattle police officer. Um, it was said that she had mental health issues, and when she called the police to help her try to figure out whether there was a burglary that occurred at her location, when they arrived, she had, I believe, either a knife or a pair of scissors in her hand and was shot and killed by a Seattle police officer. Oh, and by the way, she was pregnant and there were children in the house. Again, it made me think about a personal situation that I had when I was a police officer. In 1982, in October, I graduated from the Rochester Police Department. I believe I was about 24 years old, and it was my first assignment with my field training officer. I was assigned to Maple section in the African American section of Rochester, New York. And I believe it was about maybe 6 p.m. in the evening when we got a call from a woman who said her son had been threatening her. And when we responded to the location, she explained to us that her son had mental health issues and that every evening he would come home at around 6 o'clock after having been out all day, and she didn't really know where he was. And he was carrying a stick that had a long point on it, the kind of stick that you see guys picking up paper with along the side of the road. He would come home, according to her, and threaten her with this stick. And she, tried to seek some mental health treatment for him, and she believed that he was taking his medication off and on, but more off than on. And she was scared, and she wanted him removed from the property. It was about maybe 5:45 p.m., close to 6 o'clock. And she explained to us that every evening he would come home around 6 to watch the evening news. He was fascinated with it. Usually would come home through the front door carrying a stick. She would ask that he not carry the stick in the house. He would threaten her with the stick. And, because she was his mother, she really did not want to call the police, but she had got frustrated. She was at a point where she really couldn't take it anymore. So we got the call that night. And so as we were in the living room and listening to her explain her situation, we decided that we would wait and see if we could at least talk to this young man, definitely remove the stick from him, and maybe cite him on 302 and have him removed from the property. Just as we were talking to her, he comes through the back door with the stick, with the point on it. And he was spooked that two police officers were in his house. He started yelling and he took off out the back door. Being a rookie police officer, I took off right after him. My partner was a little older than me, and he went out the front door, and we're both chasing this young man down the street. He's running, and I'm running, and he gets close to the edge of the street, and just around that corner, there was a supermarket called Wegmans. And I defied all of what I was taught in the police academy, which was when you are chasing a subject or a suspect and he turns a corner, you make sure that you eyeball that corner before you go around, because you don't know whether that person is waiting for you with a weapon and it could cost you your life. And so, in my enthusiasm to try to catch this subject, because at this point he's not a suspect, I forgot or didn't respond to the way I was trained. And I turned that corner, and just as I did, he was standing in the doorway of that Wegmans supermarket, and he took that stick and he poked me right in my stomach. And I'm like, oh, I jumped back. And although the point did not penetrate, and largely because I had my bulletproof vest on, I felt the pressure, but didn't feel no pain. I wasn't really injured. I was startled more than anything. So I pulled my pistol out, and I had every opportunity to shoot that man, and probably would have been justified. But a billion things kind of ran through my head in a split second. The fact that he was a black man, the fact that he was standing in front of a supermarket where people were congregating because they were watching all of this. The fact that in reality I wasn't hurt. I was more startled that I didn't at that particular time feel like my life was in danger. And learning and knowing what I was taught in the academy, again, if you don't feel like your life is in danger, you really can't use deadly physical force. And so all those things kind of ran through my mind all at the same time. And the result was I did not pull that trigger. I didn't. It happened in a split second. And so as I jumped back, this young man began to run again, and I began to chase him. Of course, we called backup. We got police officers responding to the scene. He runs out into the parking lot. He's making a big scene. There are a lot of people shopping at that time in the evening in Rochester. And, we obviously drew a crowd, and we surrounded this guy. He starts swinging a stick, and the stick hits my partner in the head, and blood's gushing all over everywhere. Police officers have their weapons drawn and telling him to drop the weapon, drop the stick. Nobody pulls the trigger. We would have been justified if we shot this guy, but nobody pulls the trigger. Officers that responded really didn't even know what the situation was, other than the fact that we called for assistance, and they were there to help us. I would say there were about maybe 10 police officers on the scene, and at some point somebody hit him with their car as he was running, and he kind of flew up in the air and hit the ground, and he was immediately apprehended and handcuffed and put in the back of a police wagon. My partner was hurt. Unfortunately, there was a hospital right across the street. He was transported over to St. Mary's Hospital. I was transported over to the hospital because they thought I was hurt. I wasn't hurt. There was no blood. There was no injury at all. But my partner required about 17 stitches in his head. And it was a jarring and a memorable event for me as a rookie police officer, not being from Rochester, being from Philadelphia and living in Rochester at that time, trying to understand the area, totally unknown area to me. My second day out in the field after having gone through 16 weeks of a training academy and having all types of situations simulated in the academy, and obviously doing well enough to pass and respond to those simulated situations well enough to get placed in field training. And so I remember the captain of that particular section coming to me and saying, "Are you okay, officer?" "Yes, I am. I would understand if you didn't report to work tomorrow. As a matter of fact, don't." And I don't even remember how I responded to that. I know that night I went home, I thought about all of that, and I was contemplating on whether this was the type of job for me or not. And so I came to the conclusion that, yeah, it was. And some respects I was scared, obviously, because I'm a human being. But in other respects, I would say, no, I wasn't scared. I think I handled that situation appropriately. I didn't want to shoot anybody. That wasn't my thing. Had he had a gun, it definitely would have been a different situation. Had that point penetrated my bulletproof vest, I may have shot him, even though those people were standing around. I thought more about the people in the area, and I thought more about the fact that he had mental health problems, and he, to some degree, didn't clearly understand what he was doing. He was really reacting to the fear of a police officer in a uniform chasing him, and not understanding the ramifications and the consequences that he was going to suffer as a result of him assaulting the police officer. All those things kind of ran through my mind. And then in hindsight, really thinking about it and feeling like I made the proper decision. I came back the next day, and I went through my field training in that section and sections that I eventually started working for, and another section across town, all in African American neighborhoods, and I did well. I did very well. And so when I became an officer that had the opportunity to ride by myself, because we rode solo in Rochester, I made it my duty to try to understand the neighborhoods to which I was assigned to. And fortunately, I was assigned to a neighborhood that I lived in. And so, my job, according to me and for me, was to understand the people in my neighborhood. And so I made it a point to get out and walk the beat from time to time. I made it a point to drive around with my windows down so that I can talk to people. I made it a point to talk to the young brothers in the area, even when I told them to get off the corner and, stop gambling and put them joints out and, all that. I made it a point to get people to be familiar with who I was, and me to familiarize myself with who people were. And obviously, when people committed serious crimes and even minor crimes, I had to do what I had to do. And people understood that, but I always arrested people with some type of dignity. And I tried to make people feel like, hey, you may be doing something that's unlawful or criminal, but at the same time, I don't have to treat you like crap. I never tried to put people in a we versus them a situation, or a me versus them situation. As an African American police officer on a force that was majority white, I caught hell, not only from people out in the streets, but from some of my colleagues. People in the African American community hate the cops. And then me being a black cop made me an Uncle Tom, made me a handkerchief head, made me the guy that was on the other side. And I was able to be mature enough and professional enough to kind of dodge all that and continue to do my job in a way that I thought was proper, and at the same time uphold the law in the neighborhood that I worked in. As a result, I had a lot of respect in my community. And there were times when I would get into a jackpot and I had people from the community help me. I've had people help me chase people down. I had people help me when I was wrestling with people in the street. I had people help me. And that's uncommon in the community as far as police officers are concerned. So I tell that story to say that it's about a mentality. It's about a confidence that if you are going to do that job that you must have. It's about understanding the culture. It's about understanding the people. It's about understanding yourself. And it's about understanding why you are there to do the job in the first place. Are you there to just lock everybody up because you can? Are you there to just, use your power to dog people every chance you get because you don't like how they look, what color they are, what they do, and what they're about or what they stand for? Or are you there to create a community so that the people who are there that are non-criminal, and that's a large majority of them, can live in a harmonious atmosphere and can trust that when they call you, you're going to come in and do something to help resolve whatever their issue is? Is that what your job is? I think so. But for some reason, we have police officers across the country that have created this we versus them attitude. And I work with cops like that, no doubt. And I would always let them know, when you respond to a incident with me, we're not going to play that we versus them. We're going to try to resolve whatever the issue is in a fair and just manner, and that's the way it's going to be. If you can't do that, then send me somebody else that can, because I refuse to work with people who were unprofessional and people who were definitely not going to, for lack of a better word, dog folk because of the color of their skin. I definitely wasn't going for that. And so, I guess you could say that I wasn't a real popular police officer among non-white non-black police officers. The white guys didn't really, care for me too much. And of course, the black guys on the force, we all kind of had to stick together because we were definitely in the minority. And so these incidents of African American men and now an African American woman being shot and killed by a police officer, is it about the fact that they're black? Is it about the fact that you feel threatened? Is it about the fact that you came on the force and you are given an X amount of power and you want to exercise it to a degree to where you don't care about the human life and the human value of people? Is it about that for you? If it is, you don't need to be in the force. These police officers need to be retrained. They need to start looking at who and how they recruit. They need to be reprimanded for the inconsistency in terms of how they deal with people. And they need to be continually monitored with regards to how they are patrolling the community for which they work in. In the African American community, there's always a large presence of white police officers and a very little presence of African American police officers, simply because in most police departments, there are not a lot of African Americans. In a lot of your large urban cities, they are, but in your smaller cities, it's just not. And it goes back to who is being recruited and who is allowed to be accepted into the police academy. They have absolute control over that. And so that has to change. Because when people work in communities with people that they understand the culture and have some sort of professional relationship with them, your incidents of violence and your incidents of corruption and your incidents of people being brutalized by the police will be reduced. Absolutely. I'm not going to say it's going to be stopped, but it will be reduced, because when people have a similar cause and when people understand what their roles are respectively, then incidents of brutality will be reduced. Now, I'm not saying it's all on the police. The people in the community have to change their ideology and their stereotyping of police in their community. But that only happens when the police officers and police departments take the lead role in that. Because people are just going to be people. And what I think police officers and police departments fail to realize is that they are the professionals. They are the ones that are being trained. They are the ones that are being paid, in some cases, a pretty handsome salary to patrol areas and put people in a position to feel safe. It's not only about police officers feeling safe, it's about people in communities feeling safe. People in the African American community don't feel safe as it is because of the crime that occurs in the community. And when, it all hits the fan, what do? They call 911. They call the police because they expect the police to come and help them. When you have incidents like police coming to respond to a burglary call, and as a result, somebody comes to the door with a knife and she has mental health issues and you shoot and kill her, people lose their confidence in you. People don't call the police then. People resort to resolving issues by themselves. And we all know that most people don't have the wherewithal or the mental capacity to resolve issues by themselves to a degree to where it's going to come out favorable for everybody. And that's why they call the professionals. And as a professional, it is your responsibility to make sure that you take care of people and resolve their issue in a way that makes them come out in a favorable situation. Don't care what color they are. Don't care what their economic situation is. Don't care about the fact that you don't understand who they are, where they come from, what their culture is all about. That's irrelevant. You are the professional. And right now, we don't have no professional police officers out there. We have some. Let me take that back. We have officers out there that are really doing their job in a very professional way. But then we have a small community within the community of those police departments around the country that are bastardizing that job to a point to where people take that small segment of police officers across the country, across the board, and they compare all police officers in that vein, and it's not fair. This situation has to change. If it doesn't, we are going to experience probably one of the most horrific situations in this country than we've ever experienced. So before I go, I'll tell you this. I did a documentary called 13 Riots about 6 months ago. And what I attempted to do when I filmed that documentary was explain that, first of all, I picked out what I thought were 13 of the most significant riots that occurred in the United States, and 98% of them were based on police brutality. And as a result, people rioted, and then they destroyed a lot of American cities: New York, Harlem, Newark, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Detroit, Buffalo, Rochester, New York, Chicago, and again, all a result of police brutality, because people are frustrated with regards to how they're being treated by the police, along with some of the other negative issues that occur in our community. And I started back from the 1800s up until the last major incident in Baltimore, Maryland, with the Freddie Gray case. And, you know, one of the things that has not changed is the attitude of the American police officer. From the 1800s up to 2016, and now 2017, with Philando Castile being killed and the police officer being exonerated, with Betty Shelby being acquitted, with Roy Oliver shooting a 15-year-old Jordan Edwards, and now with this young lady, pregnant, African-American female, being shot by a Seattle police officer. If this doesn't change, we are going to suffer big time in every major city in the United States. And one of the things that I ended the documentary with was the fact that I'm afraid that if riots occur in every major city in the United States at the same time, we're going to have a hell of an event on us to try to deal with. If you want to see that documentary, go to www.youtube/C/Channel 906 TV and go to the documentary section and pull up 13 Riots. I'm not giving a shameless plug. I'm just trying to educate you to the fact that, you know, we are headed for disaster, because there's a pattern that's being developed here with how we as African Americans are being treated by the police in America. And it has to change. It really does. And if it doesn't, I'm afraid to think about what can happen. This is Rob X, and this is the X-Planation.